It says going live. This hangout on air is live.
Right.
How about that? Hello everyone, this is Robert James Fremantle, and with me, if I just click his avatar thingy, introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Robin. I'm the Swedish GM in the Dark Heresy campaign we're currently playing. And I've been invited here into this hangout to talk with Robert about various things, including Dark Heresy and Dark Heresy Ascension.
Yes, now Robin is the GM of our Dark Heresy Online Invasion 2.0. So-called Invasion 2.0 because you've run this storyline with a prior group, haven't you? And
yes.
That's kind of given you the experience for the main subject of what we're speaking about today, obviously being Ascension, but we will get to that. We're going to be covering sort of pre-Ascension first quickly, just because it's such a major part of the game, and then we'll move on to some considerations that have been relevant for Robin and his other group of late, who are at Ascension rank. I would just first like to say that we've done our introductions. Just to quickly cover credentials, Robin has a lot of experience in Warhammer 40k and Dark Heresy in particular. He's GM'd this with two groups and been a player, I believe. Is that right, in another group?
Yes, I played for about a year in another campaign.
So yes, he knows his Dark Heresy. He's got a lot of experience. He's speaking from experience, you know, in the same manner that I do with Dragon Age. And of course, well, you know me. I'm the keeper of lore in the Brigade's library. You know, Mr. Vidcast and these things. So who knows what I do? But anyway, we'll kick off with that now. Dark Heresy. Just like real quick, would you say that it was the theme in of itself of Dark Heresy that drew you to it, or was it a prior love of Warhammer 40k and its lore? Just out of interest.
From the very beginning, how I got into Dark Heresy, I didn't really know much about Dark Heresy or 40k.
Right.
A few friends of mine and my old GM, Alexander, they were like, hey, we're gonna play some role-playing games, and you like that, Robin, why don't we play like Dark Heresy? It's set in the 40k universe, and I didn't really know much about 40k, so I just played the Guardsman, and from there on I was pretty much hooked. So I played in Alexander's game for 1 year, and then I was like, hey, I would like to GM this. So I spent a lot of time preparing Invasion, and then I took most of my old game group and basically started the second campaign, which essentially was a sequel to, or a spiritual sequel to, the campaign I played in. And we've been playing that for like 2 years now, and last year we started 2.0, which is basically a new and improved version where I used all my mistakes I've learned from and tried to make a slightly better story than before.
Yeah.
And that's the one we're playing right now. And in terms of themes, yeah, I like the dark and gritty.
You'd like to play it up to its strengths, don't you?
Personally, yeah, if I can.
And you'll obviously see us get round to that soon in a minute with talk of Ascension as well. But I think it's interesting. It says a lot that you got into it from not coming in from the Warhammer tabletop route. It says a lot about the property as a license, that it's in a very strong world, that you can pick it up just on its own merits.
Yeah, I really like I didn't really know anything of 40k, and it just was so interesting for me to play in the world and experience things. And I think it was a really cool experience for my supposed guardsman who hasn't really left his home world to all of a sudden be drawn into things that he literally had no clue about. He didn't know anything about the Eldar or orcs or anything.
Because you do
probably, yeah.
I was just going to say that you do actually get a lot of these reoccurrent themes, if you were to try and put it on paper, of what Dark Heresy is about, occurring in other arenas. So, you know, sci-fi, it being in some cases kind of apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic, sometimes nihilistic, sometimes dystopian, very dystopian. But yet it's not like all of those other conventions. It still has its own identity, isn't it, strangely?
So yeah, I mean, Dark Heresy can provide a lot of different settings and a lot of different themes. Most of it is, of course, investigation and sometimes action.
Now, it's led sometimes to wrongful expectations, where someone has come in, not necessarily understood the world to their fullest, and no attack on them, everyone's got a right to their own opinion, but yeah, I mean, like one of our players in our group, when we played Dark Heresy, physically, when I had the assassin Jerichus, he only made it to rank 7 before the group stopped playing, so that was just prior to Ascension. I've never tasted Ascension, and he stopped playing because he got so fed up with, in his opinion, the mechanics, the system being so stacked against the player to fail. And it kind of, his dropping out kind of put something terrible on the whole group, and no one could quite bring themselves to play anymore. But what do you reply to that from your personal experience of his opinion being that the system is stacked for you to fail?
Personally, I love the fact that the system is stacked against you.
Yeah.
Like when I played, my GM, he didn't hold back in any way, shape, or form. He often cheated just to like have us lose. But when we actually beat him, like with our limited resources, it really felt like you were a hero because you had overcome nearly impossible odds. And in terms of like players sometimes not getting the universe, yeah, that has happened in my campaign as well. Like it happens, I guess, like people either don't read up on lore, or they don't want to read up on lore, or they're not interested in reading up on lore. And then you might have people who don't quite get how a faction or how a character would act.
Right. I mean, yeah, it was a big shame there, because this was someone who didn't necessarily understand the darkness of the world and the fact that you are just a pawn, you are a tool. As soon as you're an acolyte working for the Inquisition, you're nothing. You're expendable. And he wanted to be. He wanted to have an effect, a big effect on the world. He'd be the sort to see a commissar and say, right, I want to steal the commissar's hat. It's rebellion from the off, isn't it? And it's going to get you killed in this world, and I suppose that upset him. Shame that. So, yeah, my own personal experience of Dark Heresy had to stop there. Sometimes these things break down. I think another thing that we should cover, though, our group ran through a lot of the modules. We pretty much did all the modules except we didn't do. I know for sure we didn't do the Judgment one. Yeah, the one where the criminals and the arbitres are heavily featured with extra bits and bobs. We didn't do that, just in case you ever want to run that. Don't know anything about that.
I took a quick look on that, and from just looking at the map, I got like, oh, is this like the thing in 40K? Are you like on this are you on this station somewhere and you can't leave, and there's some form of fiction going on? It's like it's nothing like that, but just looking at the maps, it looked just like the thing, the movie.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. Well, quite a good movie for its time, I'll say. But gotta love John Carpenter. Huge inspiration.
Yep.
So, I mean, you have a particular opinion of modules, and so did our group. We didn't get on with the modules. Most of the modules we came away feeling dissatisfied, that certain things were a bit silly, that following along, actually trying to run the module, felt a bit forced and stunted and didn't make sense in a lot of places. I've had GMs say to me that the way the modules are written and put together, plotted out as a GM aid, are very, very poor in some cases, so that the information you need isn't where you need it, and you've got to flick all back and get to something else, and then flick all forward again and get to something else, and that it's like all over the place. And if you really want to portray everything properly to, be whoever you're supposed to be at that time, you've really got to either have wasted half your life studying the whole thing in advance, or deal with a very poorly laid out module. And you've had your own things to say about the modules, haven't you?
We even did a pretty long video, Lori, me, and Anya discussing the modules. But yeah, basically the modules, and I guess the game has been out for many years. I guess we could discuss spoilers here. Like, the first module that you ever get in Dark Heresy, the core book, which is called Illumination. That module, most people like that module. It's pretty short, and it's of course meant to be a tutorial type mission. It involves every element of the game that you're gonna need to use at one point or another. And it has a short but very cool storyline, and it doesn't hold back, especially not towards the end. And most people play Illumination and they're like, yeah, that was a pretty cool mission. And like the way you defeat the boss there is also pretty cool, because you can actually defeat him just by learning the lore surrounding the setting. Like, just by talking to people, you get small tidbits of like this cult that worshipped this demon, and this demon always did this, and you can use this to against him. And it has a lot of difficult tasks, like, oh, you want to do this? Well, you need to do a -30 or -20 skill roll to pass this, and you're probably not gonna pass it. But if you did succeed in that mission and you did die, you really felt like you actually deserved the victory. And the story was pretty well written. And I think they had it properly tested, and I think most of the modules they have aren't really properly tested. They have a small group that plays maybe once, and they never really go back to it. They don't have a extensive gang of people playing this. Maybe multiple times, different builds, different characters, just to check, like, is this particular class not working in this setting, or is this class going to just break this mission?
I mean, they have been a bit hit and miss, haven't they?
Like, I haven't played the full Rejoice for You Are True, but I've heard sort of like people say that if you play Rejoice for You Are True, it has some good elements, mostly the interaction with nobility, and you get insight into how fucked up the nobility class is in 40k, and like what they pass as normal and okay, and that's good. The sub-story...
Kind of shades of the Hunger Games there as well, isn't it? The elite... Yeah.
The elite that rules over the lessers.
Yeah.
And the side story involving the Serrated Quarry, who the Serrated Blades are totally a rip-off on, that's pretty cool. A lot of people like that. The bad part is that it splits the party. And when it doesn't split the party, when you're interacting with the nobles, it's only one guy who's meant to talk to the nobles.
Right.
So it kind of does this. It kind of actually does the Ascension problem, where there's one person doing all the talking, and this person can possibly not be at all places at all times, and he cannot know what he should say. So, and a lot of people base that on class rather than RP skill. So some people who have no clue on how to actually interact with nobility in 40k may end up playing the guy who's supposed to interact with nobility of 40k.
Yeah.
And of course that's good. You should be able to give new players a chance to interact, but sometimes they might not think in the particular way the module has expected them to. Again, the module wasn't really tested.
Interesting.
And apart from the that the later modules I haven't played. I just heard about, and I've seen your guys' recap and discussion about them.
Yeah.
We did play a modified version of the Lattes book, the module you get there, and that module is without a doubt the most wasted opportunity to having the Adeptus Mechanicus be a opposing faction. It literally is. It makes such bounds and leaps in logical assumptions that the players are supposed to do, and the players have absolutely no idea what they're supposed to do in that mission. It just assumes that the player has basically read the book, so they know what to do. There's no, oh, how are you gonna get the players from this place to this? There's just like, once the players get here, this happens. And once the players get here, this happens. And when the player gets to the end, they're supposed to do this. And of course, even with the Adeptus Mechanicus, it's a demon in the end. Like,
it's got to always be a demon, isn't it? Our party found that.
The only mission I played that didn't include a demon was Shades on Twilight. That's like the only one I can think of. Everyone else included a demon or a psyker or a sorcerer who worked for a demon.
Yeah, I mean,
basically probably became a demon.
And especially in our case, where we weren't Auto Malleus, it made the whole thing pointless if you try and keep to the modules.
Yeah, like what was it? The Shades on Twilight. That's an interesting take, although, and I, after sort of skimming through Shadowbloom, or before, when I heard about your Shadowbloom, I wrote a small guide on how to fix Shades on Twilight so it wasn't as bad. And like Shades on Twilight is meant to be this, oh, it's gonna be an action adventure, we're gonna fight Dark Eldar.
Right.
And then when you actually play it, you fight like the Dark Eldar twice, and there's like, first you fight one alone, and then you fight like 14 of them. And it's like, other than that, you're just running. That's all you do in that module. It isn't very action-oriented for being an action module.
Just so that you know, the Shadowbloom, which you referred to there, was it wasn't just in case you don't realise, it's not a fix to a previously made module. It's actually actually created from the ground up by Martin Garner and myself.
I didn't mean to take away from your writing skills. It's just that when I heard that you guys had actually written it, I was like, they wrote something completely original. Then it shouldn't be hard to write a how-to guide to the Purged the Unclean book.
So you don't like the modules. You've hardly run any for us. Any that you have touched upon, you've enhanced greatly. And one question I did have, is there any a module or books available for Ascension? Does it even have an adventure with it?
Ascension it has one module that it ships with in the book, called the Red Wake, I think.
Any good?
And it's, from what I understand, I read some of it, I haven't read all of it, it's a political mission. It's not really meant to be combat oriented. It's meant that you're supposed to go to this place, and there's this huge political dispute between two noble families, and the church is involved in one way. Like, they're housing the discussions. And it's called the Red Wake because someone, who I'm not gonna tell, someone gets assassinated during these political meetings. And this, of course, means that the church goes into lockdown until the murderer has been caught. And the group is essentially there to try and find the killer. So it's kind of like Rejoice for Your True, because again you're interacting with a lot of nobility, but this time the church is there and you have Sisters of Battle walking around. And it would make for a political whodunit mission, but it sort of devolves as the mission goes along. It's not being about interacting with the NPCs and learning what they're about, and it turns into this, oh, this guy was seduced by a demon again, like, and he's like almost a demon host essentially. And then once you figure him out, or once you collected enough clues to to flush him out. He makes a run for it, and you fight him and kill him, and then it's over. Unless, and this is probably the more important thing, like there are, in some of the modules, like the Red Wake and the Latesse module, they give you interesting tools for the factions, like the opposing factions. In the Latesse book, they give you the awareness tool, I think it's called. Basically, the faction that you're trying to infiltrate have a set amount of readiness. And the more you fuck up, or the more you fight, the more alarms you cause, the higher their readiness goes, and the more security measures they will enact to stop you. And it goes from being like a minor problem in some small place they're not really interested to, they know you're here, they know someone's here. And in the Red Wake, they sort of has something similar where you can either help the two noble families, like come to terms, or you can fuck with the noble families to the point that they declare war on each other and they start murdering each other in the church. And then the mission is technically a failure, because even if you catch the guy who did this, he is still technically succeeded in making the two noble families fight each other. It looks interesting, but the whole, oh, it was a demon. Again, it couldn't just have been a greedy noble or someone who really wanted this to happen. It had to be a demon. So if I play that, I would just do a massive rewrite on the story of what happened.
Yeah. Don't even think of trying to run the modules as is without sanctified rounds.
Yeah.
Or the fights will take ages.
I do like the modules because they do give you nice tidbits of lore. Like I keep ripping up things from Rejoice for Your True because it gives you a really good insight into how society works in 40k, like the bars. I've mentioned the rule of first draw and other such, and the nobility again. And I do like the Shades on Twilight because it gives you ideas on how space hulks work and how the black ships work.
Yes, my cleric Solomon had another take on the rule of first draw last session, didn't he? Said that he would draw his holy book.
And he would, yeah, if he draws a book as a weapon, it's considered non-lethal, so yeah. But so that's what I would use modules for. Just read them for the fluff, so you get an idea of how different things work, and then integrate that knowledge into your game, because as they are, they're not really too good. And to come back to your Ascension question, because I'm a master of derailing questions, there is no add-on book for Ascension. They released a short free PDF, I think it was free, where there is an Ascension sheet for Sisters of Battle. And that's it. And it's like 11 pages. They never touched upon Ascension.
Right. Okay.
And at first I didn't quite get it, and after playing it, I see why they dropped it.
All right, let's get into Ascension. Let's do that.
Yeah, sure.
We'll try and do it in a systematic rundown of the issues. We'll debate them, talk about them. I'm sure we've got something we can debate and counter and turn into a conversation here for our viewers. You don't like it, do you?
I don't like it at all.
And your group don't like it?
My group almost fell asleep last time we played it.
Right. I've not played it. I've been to rank 7 as my highest until things broke down. So let's start to go into some of those issues then that you perceive with Ascension.
Right. So, I made a small document where I wrote like the 3 main reasons why Ascension doesn't work, and these reasons are story, game mechanics, and combat. So we'll simply start with the beginning with the story, and I'm gonna paraphrase this, but I may just read small tidbits from it. Basically, when you hit Ascension, you are meant to pick one guy or girl who is to become the interrogator or the inquisitor. If you do not have an interrogator and inquisitor, a magus can do, but the game is intended for one person to have the badge. And then the rest of the party are simply gonna take what they're good at. So say a tech priest is of course gonna be a magus, and the guardsman is most likely gonna be either a crusader or a stormtrooper, so on and so forth. A psyker will probably be a Primaire psyker, and you basically become the cadre, the bodyguards of the Inquisitor or Interrogator. And then you are to go on missions, and the missions are like the book assumes, multiple times assumes, that you're gonna go on missions where you're gonna fight cults and gangs and small factions that really are beneath you in like the lower hives. And the story doesn't really make sense that an Inquisitor would go and do these things.
That's what his acolytes are for.
That's what his acolytes are for, but the group can't play his acolytes because they're his cadre, they are his bodyguards and his servants. So you would need him to have his own acolytes that are basically NPCs that he sends on mission. So the GM makes up a mission, and the Inquisitor just, okay, but I have my acolytes, I'll send them to do this. So, unless it's something really important, and this of course makes totally sense, unless it's really important, the Inquisitor and his cadre will not go and do it. So, let's say that I have a really important mission prepared, and they do go on it. The only one who will get a chance to roleplay in that mission will be the Inquisitor, because he has the rosette, he's in charge, and everyone else are literally just his servants.
Good point.
And the others, like, even if you have a good group dynamic, like my first group, their group dynamic died when they reached Ascension because no one wants to speak out against the Inquisitor. And the book sort of goes with this, like, you should have a democratic ruling whenever there's a decision, and the Inquisitor should be the tiebreaker. And I'm like, that's not really how it goes now, is it? When you have a guy who can call...
Yeah. That's how it's done in Death Watch with the squad leader, but that's a bit different.
Yeah. Because Astartes are sort of on the same level. But they're like, the Inquisitor are leagues above normal citizens. And so the Inquisitor will get to decide what they're gonna do and how they're gonna do it, and he will be most likely the face man because he will get so many pairs and so much fellowship. And so he will just be good at this. So of course he becomes the face man, and unless you have a rebellious player, people will pretty much fall in line and just do as he says. So you have one guy hugging all the screen time. And then you get to the thing where, because he can do whatever he wants, he can decide like, hey, I want to go to this planet for whatever reason I desire. So I'm gonna either order a ship to take us there, or I'm just gonna do an influence test and see if I can hitch a ride with someone there. And then you as a GM may be like, why are you going there? And he may be like, for this reason, or you'll see. Making it very hard, if not impossible, for you as a GM to prepare what the group are going to do. And you kind of need to let them have that freedom, because otherwise the illusion is broken instantly. If you say, no, even though you technically should do this, you can't.
Right, yeah. I mean, we were debating this before about possible like fixes to your dilemma of whether to still run Ascension or not, and I said, well, obviously they're higher ranked guys. The only thing I can think of is it being like sort of Superman syndrome, where you can't fight the normal villains anymore. You have to scale up the opponent. Superman's always having to take on some alien threat or whatever, which tends to piss me off. I tend to like Batman more for that reason. But we debated, didn't we, about trying to take then the Inquisitor's team and putting that up against like Chaos Space Marines and alien invasions and things like that.
This kind of leads into combat, but we're gonna stick to like the story elements, and these are minor spoilers for you maybe, but don't worry, because Act 3 is gonna be majorly different from you guys because I'm rewriting a lot of stuff. But basically, because like you said, the Superman syndrome or the Dragon Ball syndrome, however you want to call it, these guys, my team, they have fought Chaos Space Marines, and they've even recently fought a demon prince, and they butchered them.
Right.
It wasn't even a close fight. And yeah, and then you know with unnatural toughness and stuff, how hard stuff can be in Dark Heresy. It wasn't even close. But we'll get to that in the combat segment. But yeah, just suck on that for a while. Like, you really become untouchable, and you kill everything. And a new villain shows up, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna take over the world! And the group sort of just sighs and like, yeah, right, sure he does. Sure he will.
Right.
But yeah, that's pretty much the story in a nutcase. It suffers Superman syndrome pretty quickly, and the Inquisitor will kill the game because he's the only one who gets to RP to an extent. And so for some people it might work. Some people are not okay with RPing. There are game groups there is like one person who likes to RP. So these groups might do well in Ascension, especially if they like to just be unbelievably superior in combat. But most groups will not stay satisfied. I have a friend who's called Dundos. It's not his real name, but yeah, it's his online alias. And he played Ascension for like 6 games. And then he just quit because as a GM, he grew tired. And the group grew tired because it was a power trip. Like, it was a pointless power trip. There was no way to scale the missions for the group properly. But this also leads into game mechanics, which is the second part, which is that you gain mastery skills and paragon talents and influence, and these 3 things is mostly what breaks the game. Mostly. So you have mastery skills, and that's basically that you buy a mastery skill. Let's say you buy drive ground vehicle mastery. You can now drive any ground vehicle. The only exception is if it's like a Super Xeno ground vehicle that you've never seen before, but then you can just learn how to do that as well at some later point. So you can drive anything. Okay, not too bad. Okay, how about common lore mastery? You know everything that is common lore. Okay, a well-read dude might know that. Scholastic lore mastery, you know everything on a scholastic level. Yeah, only like the elite scholars of the Imperium would have this. But then we come to forbidden lore mastery. You know every forbidden lore there is.
Wow.
And that breaks the game. You know everything. And you know so much like forbidden knowledge that you should technically just gain corruption, a ton of corruption from buying that. But you know every forbidden lore there is. So, and figure if someone has all 3 of these, which the Inquisitor will most likely have. So he will know everything. You can no longer have any form of suspense. You cannot have like, oh, you walk into this tunnel and there are like blood markings on the wall and you don't quite get what it means. And he goes like, I have forbidden lore. What is it? Like, what forbidden lore do you have? I have everything. Is it Xenos demon? And I'm like, it's Xenos. Okay, I'm gonna roll. And what is it? Well, it's some form of like Dark Eldar shit. And he's like, oh, what kind of Dark Eldar shit? Well, it's like a insult or something. Like, oh, there are Dark Eldar here, and they're like very rude. And like, you can take the like now I'm of course kind of joking around, but you can take this like, oh, it's a demon, or like it could be anything, and he would know it, making it impossible for you to have any suspense unless you do the oh, but you've never seen this before, and you can only do that so many times before the group grows tired of your bullshit, because that's essentially what it is. And sorry if I use
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We used to try and keep it out in the early days with machine gun fire and things like that, but it's got way out of control on us anyway. So that's beyond us. Do I take it now that we have completely covered story and we're now onto mechanics?
Yeah, we cover story. Like that's basically the story that you suffer Superman syndrome, and it's no fun. And then you have
just keeping the viewers up to date of where we are in the systematic scale,
And then we have the game mechanics, and then there's the master skills, and you can have anything in mastery skill, or almost everything. There are like acrobatic masteries, so you get everything that involves you moving about, and you can just become master of something. I think there's a carouse mastery that you can eat anything. But then we have the Paragon talents, and the Paragon talents are meant to be there to save space on your character sheet, because when you reach Ascension, you will have a ton of talents. So Paragon talents are basically talents that are within one sphere mashed together into one, so you just need to look up one thing to know what you can do. However, these things are usually more powerful than the skills you use to create them. So when you have a character who has like 6 or 7 Paragon talents from the start, because characters can easily build to just gain Paragon talents when they reach Ascension, then you can do almost anything, you know almost everything, and you can do almost everything, and you can do it really, really good.
Right.
And yeah.
What about the different sort of upper classes you can take? As a result
Like
of that?
the different classes, like Crusader, Inquisitor, Magos.
Exactly. Have you found that they are all broken, for example?
Not all of them. Some are just clearly way leagues better than others.
Hmm.
It's again like the Adept doesn't really get, like, the Adept gets stuff and the Tech Priest gets pretty much the same stuff. So again, the Adept is overshown by the Tech Priest, and the Ascended traits, which I didn't involve in my little document, but the Ascended traits are things that your class gain. So if I'm a difficult assassin, or if I'm an assassin who wants to be melee oriented, then I become a difficult assassin, and I immediately gain equipment for being a difficult assassin. So I start with 2 power swords, and then I gain, I don't remember what it's called, but I get to do lightning attacks on charges, and then I get to choose one of 3 different Ascended talents, traits. And one of them is that I think it's in the Cult of Blood, it lets you do Righteous Furies on 9s and 10s. And then there is the Cult of Pain, which means that you can once per game, if you're hit by a weapon, you can instantly reduce that to like you taking no damage from it. And then the last one, I can look it up, but I don't remember. It's offense, defense, and then there's like a mix in between.
Hmm. I mean, have you not found that there's a way of controlling it using limitations? Like, so for instance, with the lore and problems like that, saying no, you can't learn all. You have to just carry on buying each individually, and access to all the forbidden lore is Inquisitor only, and things like that.
You could easily house rule that, and
Would that not save it?
We did do that house rule where with the lores that you buy lore mastery, but then you get to pick one. So if you want lore mastery Xenos, then you know everything there is that you can know about Xenos, but you don't know everything else. And that is of course something I recommend if you really want to run Ascension.
Yeah, because that way your Inquisitor would still be able to look to the fellows with him and say, step forward, you know this area more than I.
But that doesn't really save it, sadly, from the most crushing thing. But before we get to that, and the last thing on the difficulty is that they gain more penetration. Basically, the last thing in game mechanics before we move on to combat, the last thing in game mechanics is the influence. And influence is the resource of Dark Heresy in Ascension. You use it for gaining equipment, from having people do what you tell them to, from moving from one place to another. Rather than thrones, you just have influence. And influence doesn't represent your character. It doesn't. A low-level Inquisitor may have next to no power within the Inquisition. A low-level Inquisitor isn't a member of a cabal or have allies, might not even have acolytes, because he doesn't have a network to recruit people. So when you become an Inquisitor, you have all this power, but you can't really use it yet. You need to grow, and this is kind of well represented in the Eisenhorn books, I guess, because I've only read pieces of it. But in the beginning for Eisenhorn, if you don't know who that is, he's one of the more famous Inquisitors in the 40k lore. He started out and he didn't really have anything. He had to go and do everything himself, and he didn't have too good gear, and he didn't have limitless funds. He didn't have stormtroopers that could come and help him at any time. He went to a planet, and what the planet had to offer, that was what he could use, assuming that the planet was willing to aid him, which most of the times they were.
Just out of interest, when they spend this influence, which they have instead of thrones, is that to buy something permanently, or do they give it back, like with Death Watch influence?
The idea is that you're not meant to gain it permanently, but you can gain it permanently. If you just ask to borrow something, you gain a massive plus to the test. But if you want it permanently, then it's a minus. But you will come to a point where you have so much influence, and this doesn't take long. You're supposed to gain like 2 to 3 influence each game session, or something. It's kind of like how XP works in Dark Heresy 1. You can easily, especially if you have peers and other such, gain stuff permanently. And so it doesn't take long for the group to just walk in, and if the group thinks smart, they don't requisition stuff from the Inquisition, because then it's hard. They go to say, okay, we want this Imperial Guard gear. We go to the Imperial Guard, and then we'll use our power there, because they are much more inclined to help us than the Inquisition, because the Inquisition are used to people just fucking asking for things. So they could go to an Imperial Guard requisitions office, and they would like, hey, we're an Inquisitor, we're on a really important mission, we need your gear. And the guardsmen will hand them the gear because they have a rosette. What are they gonna do? Say no and get shot? And then they'll leave and they'll never return with the gear. And you're supposed to punish that by reducing their influence, but realistically, the guy comes and asks the guardsman, where did our shit go? And he's like, well, an Inquisitor showed up and he took it. And he's like, did he have a rosette? Yeah. Well, what was the Inquisitor's name? I don't know. How are other Inquisitors supposed to telepathically know this? Because that's one thing. If you do something really bad, the other Inquisitor will look down on you and you will lose influence to represent that they're not helping you, or they might outright work against you. But how will other Inquisitors just telepathically know that these guys have done this? Because some Puritan Inquisitors would not, like, they would tell them, like, you can't go and abuse your power. That's like one of the rules of being an Inquisitor, you can't abuse your power.
Don't they have some sort of, like, touch screen that they can put a thumb to as an identity print, or...?
You mean within the Inquisition?
Yeah, but I know that 10,000 years ago, the Primarchs were using things like that. I don't know if that technology has stayed around, but...
I don't know. I mean, I guess they would have scanners, but I don't think that the normal citizens or other factions within the Imperium would have a database of the Inquisitors in that sector. Because then it could also work backwards, that someone hacks their program and basically sees who is an Inquisitor and who are their acolytes.
True.
So it really is down to the rosette. The rosette is ultimate power. And normal, lawful citizens will not argue with Inquisitors that has a rosette. So influence is really just a stat that you keep leveling, and it turns the game into, again, it just is about the Inquisitor. Because even though anyone can use the uh, the influence pool, only the Inquisitor has to reset. Of course, people have badges of office, but that isn't a reset. So if you have something that needs to be done, like there's a cult, then you call in the Imperial Guard or the Death Watch or the Grey Knights, depending on the severity.
Yeah, so it's not really Dark Heresy anymore at that point, is it? Where Dark Heresy, you're playing the little men, and in this you're playing super important. You've kind of lost the point of what it was like playing Dark Heresy.
There's no point in playing. Like Nara in 2.0, she isn't doing anything, at least not like anything you guys are on. She sends you guys to do these missions that are too simple for her. She's off to doing far more important things. And that's sort of the point. Like, when you reach Ascension, you're no longer doing things. You're telling other people to do it for you. And then the GM has to really fudge it so that the group actually is involved in what's happening, and it's not the GM who's just rolling an influence check and sees how it goes.
So, big question out there to the community. Has anyone ever out there played Ascension, to those watching, and managed to take it all the way to cap level of that? And if you have endured it, how did you manage with your groups? And also, what did you then do with them when they were capped? Isn't it 16 it goes up to?
I think I could check. 1 second.
I think it from 9 to 16 after 1 to 8.
It's pretty high.
That's a lot of levels.
You get up the maximum. You are capped out in Ascension when you are 50,000 XP.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, when you've got that point, have you taken it on? Have you said, right, I'm going to put these guys along Space Marines now and do special missions within whatever order, or the Sisters of Battle in whatever special missions? How have you guys handled it? Anyway, back to you, Robin.
Basically that's pretty much influence for you. It's a resource, it kills the system, and if you want to use money in Ascension, if you still want to use money, then you gain 1,000 thrones for each rank a month. So an Inquisitor will gain around... Wait a second, someone is making sounds. Right, so you will make around 10 to 12,000 thrones a month when you get into Ascension, and that's an absurd amount of money. So if you still run with economy, that's pointless because you just buy everything. And if there's something you can't buy, you'll just wait a month or two, like one warp travel later, and you have the money to buy a specialized warded power armor, essentially.
Yeah.
And basically game mechanics are broken, and the different ascended traits, they're kind of involved in combat mostly, but not always necessarily. That leads us into combat, and combat is probably the most broken thing about Ascension. Like, this is where all the problems really come together and kills the game.
Yeah, now this comes back to our debate, doesn't it? I mean, because you said, okay, they killed Space Marines and this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I said, well, if we look at it in very broad terms, the tabletop Warhammer 40k experience, there are Inquisitor models, there are Psycho models, there are the different various assassins that you can use under the Inquisition packs. They've got their own little codex thing that you can take as an allies and this sort of thing now with 40k. It's quite cool, especially if you're fighting demons. I really ought to get around to doing it. And it's kind of expected clerics as well. It's kind of expected that they should actually, at very high levels, at the best of their career, take to the field of battle and aid the Imperium of Man against the forces that would seek to undermine them. However, you had a reply to that, didn't you?
Basically, when you play Dark Heresy, like I just follow this, but when you play Dark Heresy is more lore-based. It's more down to how the world works. When you play the tabletop, it has to be a balance. One miniature has to have a chance of fighting this other miniature, and sometimes a miniature has no chance. Like, if you have a guardsman fighting a dreadnought, the guardsman isn't gonna kill the dreadnought. The dreadnought is gonna kill the guardsman. But basically, in Ascension, even if you are that high, and even if you are that powerful, then you're not really playing Dark Heresy anymore, then you're playing only War.
Yeah, it isn't Dark Heresy anymore, and I think we have to accept that as soon as you get into Ascension, you've stopped playing Dark Heresy. Effectively, you're playing something else.
You moved on between a love child with only War and Death Watch. Ascension.
Only
Death Watch.
Only Watch, which is what the rest of the team does when they're not the Inquisitor, named thereafter.
Basically, like from what I've heard, Death Watch is more balanced, and Death Watch is broken from what I've heard. Not as broken as Black Crusade, but in Death Watch you're pretty strong. But then again, you're a Space Marine, you're meant to be strong. But that is more balanced than Ascension, because
we've had 3 sessions of that so far, of Death Watch, and I can report good things, but it's really down to how the GM handles it, and I will say that he hasn't even touched modules yet. This is all stuff of his own creation, and he's put us up against like real-time problems, because he said, yeah, you've got the armor, yes, you've got the skills, the talents, the abilities to be able to deal with all of this, so I'm going to give you, a threat where you've got to be in like 5 places at once, and the time in real time is ticking down. So, the players have to be on the top of their game as well. I remember right from the first session, not to deviate too much from our point, but I think it goes right into the heart of what we're saying here. Right in our very first session, the GM started us off in Death Watch saying, right, you are all in a drop pod. You're coming down, and you've got 30 seconds to designate who squad leader is and which insertion point you want to drop in, and you've got to insert that into the ship's computer. And he had a real-time timer going on his computer with sound effects set up for the end of the timer. That's how he rolls, right? And I was stating, well, I'm the Ultramarine. I've got this, and that. We're going to get basically 7 squad points if my guy takes lead on this one, and I think we should drop in on zone 3 because of this such and such cover. And one of the other players then chimed in, and he was starting to argue about the point, and the other ones were saying, no, I think Rob's got it there. But they couldn't all quickly agree in time, and we very quickly had a lesson there that because we didn't get it sorted in time, the time came up, the sound effect of the crash came in, the drop pod had landed. Because we didn't input a target, the GM inserted us randomly somewhere else, right into the middle of Tyranids pouring all over us, and we had to deal with that immediately, and we weren't able to use any like squad leader abilities or anything because we hadn't got that properly sorted in time. And then that was like delayed. So yeah, with that taking like the real time, and that real time is actually ticking, and a huge map to have to explore, and you've really then got to use those talents you've been given. Whereas if you just play it to the modules, and maybe if the writer's been really lazy, then it could go terribly, terribly wrong. And I really don't have any heart or confidence that writers would be able to come along and write anything good for Ascension either. Not that they have, anyway, or will.
They haven't, and they won't, now that they're doing Dark Heresy 2.0.
Yeah.
But they basically put Ascension in Dark Heresy 1.
So that's what screwed it, has it?
The second book. In the second book, you will be able to start out as an Inquisitor if you want to. In Dark Heresy 2nd edition.
Oh, okay. No, that's wrong.
Basically, so yeah, I guess the biggest issue with Dark Heresy Ascension is that I've run this as if it was Dark Heresy, because it's Dark Heresy Ascension. And maybe that's an issue, but it doesn't really matter, because we get into combat, and combat is the biggest issue here. Like, you have ascended traits, and for some people the ascended traits are stuff you use out of combat. For most people, ascended traits are stuff you use in combat. And ascended traits give you such hilarious things as, say, the Vindicator Assassin, who can dodge anything, and his dodges equal to his agility bonus. And I would note that his stat line is the same as a Space Marine's, when he gets unnatural toughness and natural strength and a natural agility and natural speed. So he's basically a Space Marine who can dodge everything and who can shoot anything. And then you have the Crusader, who gets a... He's basically just a living wall who is meant to protect the Inquisitor or Interrogator. And he gets to choose to either be good against aliens, mutants, or demons. And if he fights whatever he's good at, he gains bonuses. Then you have the Stormtrooper, and I don't really remember what he gets, but I do know that he gains tearing to Hellguns, like the weapon he starts out with, which is a really good gun. He gains tearing to it, so he deals a lot more damage. And then there is the Magos. The Magos can do so he deals more damage one round, or he gains more armor, or he can like repair things really good. So of course my Magos, the Magos that plays in my group, he put the Armor Monger, I think it's called. So he gains 2 armor to all his location automatically, if he does a little thing, which he's always doing, because why not? So this goes on. Most classes has something combat oriented, and these things are usually broken. The Premier Psyker apparently has one that allows him to do two powers per round, because we house ruled it in Ascension. You can only cast 1 ascended power per round, and I sort of took this to heart and house ruled that in Dark Heresy 2.0, that you can only cast 1 psychic power a round unless you have a special talent or training that allows you to cast 2, mostly so I can have bosses fight and use 2 powers, but that's basically the idea. So he can cast 2 ascended powers, and we'll get into Psykers later, because Psykers are broken.
Well, you know, the great thing about bosses is that you can, the best thing to do with bosses is to let them break the rules anyway. So like say, oh, well, whatever, you'd be limited by bosses have such and such, because maybe they're outnumbered. So, you know, if something can proc a chance of critting in some way, or you know, coming off some other effect, some AoE blast from them or something, it's got the capability of happening every round to whatever extent, or things like that. Or like you were saying there, the 2 attacks, you know, you could say, well, yeah, bosses have 3, this sort of thing.
So we get into this where, so I'm gonna take an example, like the last time we played. These guys they were after someone. I'm gonna try to avoid spoilers, but yeah, these guys were after someone, and this guy knew they were coming. So yeah, so they landed on this planet, and outside there were some Xenos they had to deal with, and they rolled initiative, because they literally teleported down from their ship, and they teleported down into a war zone. So they were instantly surrounded and had to roll initiative, and they started shooting, and then it became the Psychic turn on the first round, and he cast 1 psychic power, and he killed like 80% of the bad guys with 1 power. The rest were so devastated by this spell that they had to do a willpower test or flee, and of course they fled, because they had lost like 80% of their numbers in 1 spell. So right. The group walks into this place where the guy is hiding, and they walk into this room where guys have laid out an ambush. They walk in, and they start getting pummeled by bolter and lasfire. And these were not just standard las guns; these were like hell guns. So they had a lot of penetration and deal a lot of damage. And of course, the guys shooting at them had crack shots, or mighty shots, or deal even more damage. And the first round is basically them just wading into combat and like running for cover. And on the second round of combat, they just charge them and they kill all of them. And there were like probably 18 of these guys, and they had 2 ogres as well, and they killed all of it in one round, and they didn't take any damage from the second round because when they walked into the ambush, they didn't get to dodge, right? Except for the guy who had Vindicate training, because they were ambushed, they were taken by surprise. And so they kill everything in one round, and the Psyker kills like 7 guys with 1 power. And then they get to the boss fight, and the boss fight, the boss had basically a Space Marine in Terminator armor, and assassins of his own. And so they charge this guy, and they kill everything within like 3 rounds. Even the Space Marine is helpless, because he can only dedicate himself to like so many targets, and when the targets just keep dodging him, and none of them are taking damage, except for the Crusader, who has to body block shots aimed for the Inquisitor. So then he takes damage by jumping in between the Inquisitor and like a power sword that one of the assassins cut him with. And of course, in Ascension, everything deals ludicrous amounts of damage, so he was almost one-shotted by this one attack. So he was rendered useless for most of that combat.
Wow.
And so the group are like the bad guy is having his speech, you know, bad guys have to have speech, and this was a pretty intimidating guy. This was not a guy who just like randomly walk up and punch. This is the guy who really can destroy worlds, if he feels like it. And they were basically yawning at him, because they knew he wasn't a threat. And lo and behold, it took them 3 attacks to put him down, and then he had power armor on.
So it sounds like Fantasy Flight here with Ascension as a mechanics set are really bowing to the power player type gamer, and also not necessarily the person that wants to keep the lore in place. And those sort of players tend to think, oh well, this is really good as soon as they get the power in hand. But you've got to be careful with giving players what they want, because like you say, it makes them bored eventually, doesn't it?
Like there's like we could use Laurie for an example right now. Like he wants a bolt pistol really badly, and bolt pistols are cool. They are also accidentally the best weapon in Dark Heresy. Bolt guns maybe outperforms them, but yeah, bolt weapons are best. They are the top of the gear. Like there are of course melta guns and stuff, but all around a bolt weapon is pretty damn good in any circumstance, especially when you can shoot it in any environment, be it void, in atmosphere, underwater. It works everywhere. It's like an AK-47. You can run it over with a tank and it would still work. And so when he walks into this shop, and he has already like a Judge Slayer, which is a pretty good gun, and he wants to buy a bolt pistol, it's like, no, I'm not gonna give you a bolt pistol now, because you would use it for the rest of the game, like the rest of the campaign in fact, and you would never get beyond the bolt pistol. And why should you? It's the best gun in the game. And there's no more boring way to get it than to buy these things. And that's sort of the problem with Ascension. You buy, or just tell people to give you, this top-notch gear that is the best of the best, and then you have it, and you don't feel like you've earned it. So you don't value it, and then you grow bored. But in combat, like I'm just gonna look at the notes here. Combat. So when you get into combat in Ascension, you will have around 50 or 60 in all stats, most likely up to 70 unmodified if you rolled really good. And with stat boosts, and not house ruling the way I have, with stat boosts you'll easily get beyond 100 in your best stats. So you never fail to attack or dodge or parry. And the few times that you do fail, you'll just use a fate point and you'll pass. And then the damage, you will deal so much damage, so bad guys will need to have a lot of health in order to just survive one round. but then you have so much health, so they will need to be able to one-shot you. Because when they actually do hit you, if they don't one-shot you, they will do no damage to you, so they are no threat to begin with. Some enemies, like say assassins, will usually have either the Death Cult training or the Vindicator training, which means that they have a lot of attacks or a lot of dodges. And either way, they will either attack a lot of times and never hit, or they will attack a few times but never get hit themselves. And this drags out combat. We have once dragged out combat for 2 hours, where they were just dodging each other. And this was pre-Ascension, but in Ascension this could potentially go on for longer. Wow. And then you have like really tanky enemies like Tech Priests. Tech Priests are broken. So you can have a tanky Tech Priest, and if you follow the rules, he would be unkillable. Even an Ascension team wouldn't kill the Tech Priest. You would have this slow, lumbering giant who, if he gets a hold of them, will kill them in 1 round, but he will never do that because they have so high stats that they will just dodge him. But they'll never kill him because he'll just soak up all the damage. And then you get weapons that are one-hit kills and psychic powers that are technically one-hit kills that the enemies have. So imagine that you're Solomon, Rod, and you get to Ascension and you play a Hierophant, and we all love Solomon because he's crazy and funny and he's really cool and he's really dark and grim. And then let's say that you're fighting...
I mean, yeah, he puts his life on the line. He doesn't care about dying, does he? That's the way I play him, yeah.
Let's say that you're fighting Necrons, because I think they have the same rules.
Right.
I think they have this rule. But anyway, this is an example. Let's say that they have a rule called Necrotic Beam. Necrotic Beam is that if you're hit with this weapon that has this rule, or this type of weapon, then if they roll a 10, you are vaporized and die. No saves.
Okay.
So imagine Solomon running up to them, and it doesn't say if force fields actually works. I don't know if force fields even shield against this. So
right.
If Solomon is fighting and he's rallying like the troops, and then someone shoots him with his weapon, and Solomon is like, but I have like 28 wounds. I will probably be able to tank at least 1 shot. And they roll a 10. Solomon is dead. He's gone.
Yeah, on the presumption that the player wouldn't have fate points, but
it just says that he's vaporized. I don't know if fate points save against it. You're turned to ash. And I know that fate points does state that you can't. Some things are too grim for you to be saved from. Like you can't burn a fate point to survive space. Space kills you, and other such things. So this might be, but that's following that rule, you might not be able to burn fate points to save against this. There are psychic powers that can turn you into a warp spawn. Of course, this is all only if you fail with a certain degrees of willpower test. But if you're not, if you're Emma, even in Ascension, you're not gonna have that great willpower. So when a greater demon uses this power on you, and you two roll opposing willpower tests, guess who's going to win? And guess who's going to win with a lot of degrees of success? Emma's dead. No saves apply.
I mean, with something like the disintegration that you're talking about, is it possible to take the body part and apply disintegration damage to that with a fate point usage? So
I
that
guess
it's
that
completely
that
gone.
would be it. I would never, personally, I would never have a one-hit kill. If someone hits you and he does with flat amount of damage does enough to down you, that's one thing. But if someone hits you and just because they happen to roll the magical number on their die, you're dead, that's not fair. So I would probably let, if it's a headshot, you're pretty dead. But if it's if you're hitting the arm or the leg, then I would probably allow you to burn a fate point, and it's basically just that limb that is gone. Of course, you would still take wounds, but yeah, that would...
I kind of feel that even with Dark Heresy, ranks 1 to 8, that there is a danger in a way of players not feeling that connected to their limbs, that this feeling of sort of, well, okay, if I lose the limb, I can just get a cybernetic implant, or a new cybernetic one put on, a prosthetic that will be probably better than the one I had before. This is great. I've just, I've lost my arm and I've lost my legs. I can run faster. I'm the $1 million man. This is brilliant. But the problem, that's a problem really for you, the GM. And I think I would be tempted to suggest that anyone that endures that suffer a certain amount of insanity from the process.
Yeah, something similar. Like the book even hints, like the old book, because Dark Heresy 1, first edition now, wasn't written by Fantasy Flight. For those of you who might not know, it was written by a gang called Dark Industries. And Dark Industries were basically GW's RP section. And they made Dark Heresy, and they made Inquisitor's Handbook, and they made Purge the Unclean. However, Purge the Unclean was the last thing they did, so it was towards the end of their life cycle, so it was probably pretty rushed. So that's what the common idea is, that it's rushed.
And obviously it's different companies, that's why the modules feel different, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, and then Fantasy Flight bought up Black Industries, and basically Fantasy Flight Black Industries really wanted to hit home with this dark and grim and deadly world. Yeah. Anything can and will kill you. They wanted it to be like Cthulhu. They didn't want you to ever really feel powerful unless you really, really lived long enough and earned it. And Fantasy Flight didn't want to do that. They wanted to pander to people, and there you have basically Black Crusade and games where you are insanely powerful.
Right.
And why Ascension just turns you into this powerhouse.
That Black Industries thing you're talking about there, they also, I think, held the license on Warhammer Fantasy as well.
And it's Fantasy Flight who owns that now, I assume.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there you go, kids. Some more knowledge for you if you didn't know. But basically, that's just that's damage in Ascension, if you're ever hit, like those rare instances you're hit. And now we move on to the most broken part of Ascension, which is psychic powers. The psykers in Ascension are broken, they shouldn't even be playable, because you are basically an alpha level psyker, the amount of devastation you can put out. If there's a psyker on the enemy team who's Ascension, he can very much kill the entire team in one spell cast. He casts one power, and if he pushes it, he's probably gonna pass it, and he will deal X amount of damage, and the group will 9 times out of 10 be unable to dodge, either because the massive AoE or because the spell is auto-hit. I had one psyker one psyker on the opposing faction cast one power. He dealt 28 damage, 10-3 to everyone in the party. So they had to burn everything they had to survive that.
Wow.
And one guy, the psyker, he couldn't. So he was hit. I think he had to burn a fate point, and he was basically rendered useless for the rest of that. That was one power. Had he gained a second turn, they killed him quickly, because once they realized how much damage he did, they focused everything they had on killing him. But had he gotten a second turn, he would have killed them, because they had already burned all their survivals, like what they could do to survive. And if you have a psyker on your team, then unless you're fighting untouchables, or just enemies who are immune to psychic powers, you are going to win everything just as long as you can hold up long enough for the psyker to get his turn.
Jesus.
So the psyker, the guy in my team, he did arc lightning, which is basically the ascended form of bio lightning, and because you get to shoot multiple lightning, just like bio lightning, you can shoot multiple bolts. and he did one such cast, and he fired 14 bolts. That deals like 1d10 plus 10 or something. So we calculated that he needed at least 2 lightning bolts to kill X number of guys. So he just rolled. He didn't even need to roll damage because it was so much damage. So he just arbitrarily killed people. So each round he would cast Arc Lightning, and he would kill about 7 dudes.
Holy crap.
Like, and then these were like Stormtrooper level bad guys. These were pretty high. Like, I couldn't really make them any more difficult. Like, they were basically Ascension characters themselves, and they were fighting a small horde of these dudes. Like, if they were fighting a horde, they would have killed the horde faster, because then you wouldn't have needed to allocate extra shots to separate targets. If I threw a horde, like if I threw a magnitude of 30 horde at them, they would kill that horde in like 1 round, just from the sheer amount of attacks they gain.
By the way, do you like the magnitude horde rules?
I like them. I actually want to find ways to use them in Dark Heresy, because sometimes you face enemies that aren't really too intimidating alone, but in a horde they might be intimidating. And then you might like Grots, for example, or a prime example, or just mobs of ordinary citizens of the Imperium. And then the best part with hordes is you don't need to kill every last one unless they're fearless. You just need to inflict a set amount of damage, and then they will break and run away. So you don't have to fight to the bitter end. You can just inflicting enough damage or just scaring them can work. So if you're doing poorly, you can just whip out the flamer and automatically inflict a lot of damage on the magnitudes. So yeah, hordes. I like hordes. Of course, they're meant to be fought by Space Marines, but yeah, you can definitely use it in Dark Heresy. I would wait for later levels though, so you don't accidentally kill the group too early. But yeah.
Wow. Yeah, our GM in Deathwatch hasn't been implementing it with us, so we've been still like fighting even large numbers of low-level Tyranids and things.
Like
Old school.
the bonus is that combat will run a bit faster.
Mm.
The negative is that it kind of breaks the immersion, because all of a sudden you're killing X enemy way easier than you did previously. But when they become like 5 or so, then you turn it into ordinary Dark Heresy combat, and then all of a sudden they became way more deadly. Or it's also the fact that excuse me. It's also the fact that they become more deadly the fewer they are, and damn it, I forgot what the second thing is. But yeah, oh yeah, they only gain 1 attack essentially. In Black Crusade they fixed this, so they gain more attack, but essentially it's you go, and then the horde goes, and the horde goes once. So it doesn't really reflect the sheer magnitude of how many they are, because
they don't get lots of goes with that one.
In Deathwatch, I haven't read the expansions, but in Deathwatch the horde gains 1 attack, and because because the enemies have so low stats, they're most likely going to miss, and if they hit, then they might do a lot of damage, or they might do no damage. So in Black Crusade, they kind of upgraded the horde rules, so they're way better, because then the hordes gains X number of attacks equal to like their magnitude bonus. So a huge horde will still gain a lot of attacks that are rolled separately rather than just one in one go. And I think hordes can benefit from some rules, so they gain bonuses. So in Black Crusade they kind of refined the horde rules, which doesn't really matter, because in Black Crusade you'll kill everything anyway. So yeah. So basically that's combat for you. Combat is over in 1 to 3 turns in Ascension, and it really isn't fun to play either as a GM or as a player, because the players don't feel like they've earned the victory. Like, the players are never in danger to begin with. Like, they come to the bad guy, and they've killed basically a small army to get there, and they haven't barely been scratched. And only during the actual final battle does one of them suffer some wounds. And we sat there for like 1 hour after we finished playing, just discussing what we should do, because none of us were having any fun. I didn't have fun because this bad guy who I had planned out, he came off as a major poser, and then again he wasn't a major poser, he was a pretty big dude, and the group felt like we like, what's the point? Why have the Inquisition been unable to stop, say, the serrated blades? If we could do this to this guy, why haven't, say, Tyrus Graves sent a team of his best men to just single-handedly go and kill their leader? Like, they don't even need to be stealthy, they'll just walk in through the front door and kill everything, and then, like, that's over. It breaks the immersion, essentially, because you're so powerful. Or I've talked to you a lot of times, like, you should never, as an ordinary human, be able to fight a Space Marine one-on-one. A Space Marine should be a massive boss battle, because he's a Space Marine, he's supposed to go up 1 against 400. But in Ascension, you're basically on the same level to fight a Space Marine single-handedly and kill him. Pretty easily, in fact. And they've done this multiple times now. And I tried to build up Space Marines as these really major boss fights, but it's basically trash mobs for them now. The only way I can make Space Marines quote-unquote hard is sticking them in Terminator armor and giving them an obscene health pool. That way they last like 3 rounds instead of just 2.
So, we've discussed a lot of the problems that are inherent with Ascension, and we are facing it down eventually with our gaming. We're now like, what, rank 5? I think
you're rank. You might be rank 5, rank 6 maybe even. I will need to check that out.
It's coming up, but we don't get masses of experience, like the books would give us in that sense. But once it does, hypothetically, we've been discussing, haven't we, how we would handle sort of the Ascension levels, whether we'd run Ascension. You're saying no, you wouldn't run Ascension as is.
I wouldn't run Ascension at all.
Can you see any like fixes to how you'd have the guys continue? If you wanted to say finish your story or whatever.
Of course I want you guys to play the same characters to the end. Because it's kinda, I don't want you to be like, oh, I'm gonna make a new character near the end who hasn't really been involved in anything. I don't like that. And I know, like, Laurie has been on me with this, that you need to have some form of, like, progression. And I'm like, yeah, I agree, but there comes a point where you have basically reached the pinnacle of what you can do, where you can't go beyond what you are.
Yeah. So what did you think of Anya's suggestion of being able to gain experience but only purchase what was behind you?
That was one way I figured, but that could potentially lead to just being extremely bloated with your skills and talents, and you would have basically everything. It would lead to the same problem, because you would eventually have everything. The idea I was gonna do was that you can still gain talents and skills by basically, like, the GM gives you these. Like, your character has been through X event or has studied X lore, you gain this as a result. But it's nothing you can buy, it would be something I give you. Or I could give you, like, if you do this, then you might actually gain something from it. But you wouldn't be able to buy, like, players have actually complained to me, so it's not just me. Players have said, like, well, you shouldn't be able to buy fate points in Ascension. In fact, you shouldn't even gain new fate points when you reach Ascension. You should only gain fate points from performing, like, these, like, killing demons, like, doing really heroic acts.
Of course.
Like, so you shouldn't be able to buy fate points, and you can still, like, you can buy off corruption and insanity down to a point. You can't buy it all off, just a set amount. But yeah, that would be it. Like you can't buy, you shouldn't be able to buy yourself to victory, and that's pretty much what Ascension is. So when you reach 15,000 XP, which I honestly, using this system we're doing now, unless I really hand out a lot of XP, I don't think you'll actually reach it before the campaigns end. Because if we play on average 30 games a year, and you gain 50 XP from each, even if I give some people some bonus XP, most of you will probably not reach max level. But if you do reach max level, it will probably be around the end anyway, so it shouldn't be too hard to just hold out. For me, the most important thing is that when you reach, like you're very much human in a very non-human universe. Like there are things out there that are simply better than you. Astartes being that. Like Astartes start at this, as Space Marines start at the same level as you when you're maxed out. So like Space Marines are beyond you. Demons should be beyond you unless you're really, really prepared for it. And even then they should be a pretty tough fight. And
yeah, I've said that before, that that's actually one of the strengths of Dark Heresy, probably its biggest strength as far as I'm concerned, from its theme point of view, being that you are just the Joe Everyman, so much so in comparison to some of the really big heroes of the universe, and you're just pretty much a slave to the Inquisition as one of their acolytes, that it really does give you a lot of unique role-playing opportunities. Especially the world being as dark as it is as well, as opposed to you being one of the big hero type people. You're subservient, you have to do it because you've been told to, you get to suffer, it's good drama.
Yeah, and you might not even have Inquisitors that care for your safe being to begin with.
That's drama.
And I mean, that's what, like I want you guys to feel like you have impact. Like your choices do have impact on the story. You might not see it, but they do. Like already this far in, and I've said this before, already this far into Invasion, your choices have had major differences from what happened in their game, like the first group. There was things that happened, say with the Eldar, that didn't happen with you because you made different choices with the Eldar. And so on and so forth. Like, the story is different. Like, one of the major differences that you guys would have seen would be with Solaria on Vaxanide when she was captured by the Serrated Blades. Like, I didn't plan that, but she ended up captured by them anyway, so I just used that, and that didn't happen. Like, that thing that happened to you didn't happen to the first group. Like, and that was a major difference. And it was maybe like I still used the same map largely, but the events played out vastly differently from the other group. So, like, to me, I want you to feel like your actions have an impact on the universe. They definitely do. I just don't want you to be so powerful that you grow bored, because there's nothing worse than being a GM and having people yawn at your game, because then you start second guessing whether or not you're doing something wrong or like what it is. But essentially, after talking to the group, it is largely the game itself has grown boring for them because they're no longer challenged. Like before, they were challenged, but then they reached max level and then they reached Ascension, and now they're basically demigods, and it's no fun anymore. So basically, I just want, like Anya really wants to be an interrogator or inquisitor. That's like how she wants Solaria to end up. Like, she wants, basically, like in the epilogue we have Solaria become an inquisitor, and I'm like, I might have people like RP that you gain like prestige, that someone might get an interrogator badge, or like someone gets a new title, or someone gets something. That's RP.
Yeah.
But you would still be a very much dedicated servant to someone who is above you. And I might not even want to give someone who I don't trust, and I'm not saying I don't trust Anya, but I wouldn't want to give someone an interrogator badge, because it could potentially really badly turn into Ascension, where the interrogator gets to do all the fun stuff, and the rest of the group just follow along and do what the interrogator says because he or she is in charge.
Well, have you ever considered that with something like, say, Rogue Trader as an RPG, the entry level there for starting characters is an equivalency in Dark Heresy of rank 5, and that means effectively where our group are now, we could all step straight into Rogue Trader without having to roll any of the Rogue Trader things. I mean, potentially you've got the danger there of being led around by the Rogue Trader. That's the same problem as possibly the Inquisitor.
Uh, from what I've heard, from what I've read up on, like I've heard and read like 7 different stories of Rogue Trader, and only one of them was positive.
But
And
like, yes, could some of those people not go on into a career like that and join a ship? And
you could potentially. It does state in the Rogue Trader book that you could play an acolyte from Dark Heresy, and you're basically traveling with the Rogue Trader.
Yeah.
If the Rogue Trader is Puritan, of course, and would be willing to work with the Inquisition. But yeah, you could do that. Although Rogue Trader suffers from the same problem with Ascension, that you just start out really powerful and you get stuff given to you from the get-go. You start with power swords and bolt guns. And the Rogue Trader, again, is the hero of the show. So if you play Rogue Trader, you probably want the Rogue Trader himself to be just an NPC, and he gives the group orders what to do.
Oh, good idea.
And then you have the group. The group don't get like one in the group might play an important character on the ship, but mostly they should just be like people who work and live on the ship. They shouldn't really be too high up in the chain of command. Because then there is no growth. However, if they start out nowhere and as the story goes along they get promoted, they feel like they've earned getting close to the captain and gaining his trust and gaining access to his personal armory that has all these cool power weapons and bolt guns and plasma pistols and stuff. And then they would start out, instead of starting out with bolt weapons and chain swords, they should start out with las guns and stub weapons, like in Dark Heresy. They should really start out at higher level, but still, like gear-wise, they shouldn't be too advanced. Especially on ships where the weapons you have are strictly regulated, so that you don't cause a hull breach.
Yeah.
Because that's important to take in note.
I was kind of interested in the Navigator, for example, and possibly playing one that's kind of a bit offhanded and necessarily doesn't have a good relationship with the captain, and as can sometimes maybe occur, them being their own faction, of course. But yeah, they've got their own little mini game as well that they can play, basically for accuracy of warp transition and things. It sounds fun.
Yeah, they have pretty elaborate rules for warp travel. I think I've read some of it, but basically, yeah.
But you imagine Solomon carrying on a ship like that, and traveling the unknown darkness of space.
Well, yeah, like the I guess like this isn't really spoilers. I don't consider spoilers, but like if anyone survives Invasion, like my fault of being like a sequel would be Rogue Trader, and that it would necessarily not be the same group, but like if the group wanted to, I guess some could carry over. But
yeah.
If there was ever a sequel, it would be you're on a Rogue Trader ship in the Krohn's Expanse. And this has been happening in the Calixis sector, but you're not really interested in that because you have bigger issues to deal with right now. And then the story would like carry over, but with new people, and then you would roll up Rogue Trader characters. And then, of course, yeah.
In the meantime, we'd hopefully by then get it fixed so that we can try and get these sessions going out live on YouTube. It would be nice, wouldn't it? And we were discussing the idea of still trying to get some of our Roll20 integration going onto YouTube. Have any of you out there successfully done your campaigns from Roll20 to YouTube? Leave comments below, links even to your videos. Now's the time to show them off. We'll take a look, see how you did it.
We should definitely try that though, Robert. Like to stream from Roll20. You and I should try it out later on at some point, just to have a few tests and see if it works and see how the quality is.
Yeah, sure.
So like we could probably set up a session for that later at some point, later next week or sometime. But
Cool.
yeah,
Do you feel
so
you've covered everything you wanted to cover?
I feel like I covered everything. Like I could like send you the what I wrote, and you could add it in the description. You could otherwise add the description, like add the link to our Facebook page. People could like us on Facebook and stuff, and follow us there. Or you could just put this up as it is.
Okay. Well, I think at least the the Facebook page to the invasion group might be fun for some people.
Because then, well, you'll find my document that I wrote on the Facebook page. It should be at the top right now of the time of this recording. Unless someone has posted something while we've been talking, then it should just be a bit down.
Yes.
But yeah,
they know how to use a scroll bar.
they should know how to use a scroll bar on the internet.
Yes. All right. We'll hang it up there so that we don't keep on and round in circles on ourselves. And it's been a pleasure talking to you, Robin, again.
Thank
and I just want to say that I have immense respect for this man as a GM and as a player, from the point of view that I'm a GM too, and when I look at some of the things that he comes up with as a GM, it sometimes makes me feel like I should be doing better, or it feels like a challenge, a personal challenge to myself. Wow, maybe it just makes me feel lousy sometimes. Wow, I'm not doing as well as this, I don't think, or something like this. So yeah, just putting that out there. And Robin found me through my videos on Dark Heresy, and that's how he invited me to join the group.
I was looking for players, and I'm like, this guy looks cool. I would like to have him. So I asked him. He'll probably not get back to me, but it's worth a shot. And he got back to me, and I'm happy for it, because Solomon is one of my favorite characters in a campaign in a long time. So I just like crazy people.
Yes, we should make a star out of you on YouTube. Really, we should. If you want your YouTube page as well listed, send me that, and I'll stick it in the info bar.
If I would do a dedicated RP channel, I would do a new one, because my current one is kind of old and it's just more for personal use. But I might get back to you on that, maybe at some point when I can start recording my own videos.
Okay. Good stuff.
But yeah, I think we've covered everything, and I've been rambling on as usual, and it's been a good time. So I guess that's it for today.
Well, we'll see you guys at the next one, and thanks for tuning in, either live or later on. And it's a bit of a shame that we haven't been able to present all of the invasion footage to you, but we will try and work on that as soon as possible to get more of that. However, the streams are available, aren't they, as well?
You could go to the Facebook page. Like you could even put the link to the stream in the description, so they could go to the stream and they could watch our recorded games there. So yeah, if otherwise you can also. So again, go to the Facebook page, and in the info bar you can find a link to the web page that we have, that our tech priest, our Magos, Michael, has so graciously donated to us. So yeah, you can still watch the stream. You can catch up on 1 year worth of game. So definitely do that.
Yes.
There's been a lot of silly adventures, but it's also been pretty grim and dark, and I like it when it's grim and dark.
Yes, there was that time Solomon got up and sang for everyone.
Oh yes, you definitely want to see that. When this is over, I will have to sit down with Michael and do a best of with the different characters, and I will have to include Solomon's prayer with the mutants and his song. Those two must make it into that cut.
Don't forget the death of Darius sort of situation.
The death of Darius. The more sad death of Darius.
Yeah, well,
But
the eulogy that Solomon put out there was almost had Laurie in tears. He said,
sadly, I don't remember much, but I'll need to check that back up, I guess.
"All right, guys, thanks for tuning in, and well, I'll see you at the table."